Hello and welcome to WION Live Broadcast from Washington, D.C. I'm Benji Haya, and these are the headlines. Kiev says it's shot down more than 300 Iranian Shahed 136 kamikaze drones that have become a key weapon in Russia's arsenal used to target crucial energy infrastructure in Ukraine. The Kremlin confirms Russian President Vladimir Putin will host talks in Sochi between the leaders of arch foes Armenia and Azerbaijan. Elon Musk takes control of Twitter and fires its top executives in a deal that puts one of the leading platforms for global discourse in the hands of the world's richest man. Philippine search and rescue teams pull bodies from water and thick mud, bringing the death toll from flooding and landslides triggered by a storm to 42, with dozens more still feared buried. Spanish prosecutors drop all corruption and fraud charges against star footballer Neymar and his former club Barcelona over his transfer to the Spanish Giants in 2013. Let's start in the United States, where Election Day is just 12 days away, but the Democrats are already feeling the heat. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer told US President Joe Biden that the Democrats are going downhill in the Senate race in Georgia. The two chatted on the tarmac after Joe Biden touched down in Syracuse, New York, where he spoke about his economic plans. The conversation was caught on microphone by television cameras.
That seat, we're in danger of that seat. As a matter of fact, we thought we were, but it's us. Well, it looks like the debate didn't hurt us too much in Pennsylvania as of today, so that's good. And we're picking up steam on that.
Republican US Senate candidate in Georgia, Herschel Walker, hopes to unseat Democrat incumbent Raphael Warnock in that November 8th election that could determine which party eventually controls the Senate.
The state voter will see it because the state voter, it's hard to believe that they will vote for Herschel.
Democrats have narrowly held both chambers of Congress and the presidency for the last 2 years, but they may not have such consolidated power for much longer. Republicans are favoured to win the House in the midterms, bolstered by frustration over the state of the economy and advantages in the redistricting process that takes place every 10 years. Democrats, meanwhile, are working to hold their ground, campaigning in a number of states on maintaining access to abortion and other key issues. And taking the lead is President Joe Biden, who's touting giant investments in semiconductor manufacturing in a bid to seize back the narrative for his party.
Amazing. Folks, we're here to celebrate one of the most significant investments in American history. Again, not hyperbole. One of the most significant investments in American history. And it's going to ensure that the future is made in America. One of the bright spots around the country that should give us a sense of optimism and hope about who we are as a nation, and it's part of a broader story about an economy we're building and one that works for everyone.
Putting in and out.
God just opened up our spiritual eyes.
Now we are adult human females.
Barrier is giving up on America's promise of freedom.
God just opened up our spiritual eyes.
Now we are adult human.
Joined by our correspondent Susan Tarani, who is live with us from New York. Susan, a concerted effort now by the Democrats to try to push in these final 12 days to recover, led by President Joe Biden, who is in Philadelphia later today. Is there a chance that they could pull this back and maintain some control in Congress?
You know, it's interesting that former President Barack Obama is heading to Georgia now, a state that President Biden was able to flip by a small margin during the previous presidential elections. This is when you know that the Democrats are feeling the heat between Raphael Warnock and Herschel Walker, despite the huge controversies surrounding Herschel Walker regarding abortion nationwide. But however, in Georgia, you see that they're running neck and neck. We're talking about the Senate race over there, but we know how important that is. And when you see former President Barack Obama really going there and trying to pull together Georgians for the gubernatorial elections for Stacey Abrams, Raphael Warnock, and then some congressional candidates as well, you know that they are definitely feeling the heat. You know, whether or not they'll be able to hold some seats is yet to be seen. More and more as we get closer to the elections, it just seems that we are going to see that sort of red wave that we initially talked about. And you know, it's really interesting because poll after poll, inflation, economy, and crime are really topping voters' concern. But because the Democrats really haven't been campaigning on these messages, or they don't really have anything substantial to campaign on when it comes to these messages, they're still hammering on issues like abortion. I mean, you just saw Stacey Abrams this morning talk about that. And of course, you know, her trademark voter suppression in Georgia, which is completely false as well. So voters are smart. The Democrats are going to have a hard time. There are some predictable outcomes for the Democrats in the House and the Senate. But other than that, I think it's going to be a very, very long night for the Democrats come November 8th.
And as you mentioned, Barack Obama heading to Georgia, Joe Biden's in Philadelphia and in Pennsylvania, two key states in this race. What are the other main toss-ups that we'll be looking out for on November 8th? And also, if the Republicans do take control of both chambers, what are the sort of implications for Joe Biden's presidency?
Yeah, we'll take a look at Arizona, Nevada. Those are states that we'll have to be taking a closer look at. And I do want to say, despite the fact that New York here has really been a traditional blue state, there's a governor's race going on here. And no one ever thought that the incumbent Kathy Hochul, a Democrat, would be running neck and neck against the Republican Lee Zeldin. And the only reason they're so tied up is because of the issue of crime. Crime in urban cities are really putting Republicans at the forefront. And for the most part, I think there was this talk of quality candidates on the part of Republicans, and the Democrats were hoping that perhaps the Republicans didn't have quote unquote quality candidates. But I think that notion was sort of sidelined after we saw that debate between John Fetterman in Pennsylvania and Dr. Mehmet Oz just because of his medical condition. What will Republicans do? I think the Democrats are very concerned about President Biden's remaining legislative agenda. big government. And also remember, there is an ongoing investigation regarding the president's son, Hunter Biden. Anthony Fauci, the origins of COVID, that's something that the Republicans said they're going to go after. So a lot's at stake for the Democrats, and I think that the Republicans are really hoping to gain control, not just on the economic aspects of it. They're hoping to, kind of hone in, but then there are these sideline issues, important issues on the sidelines as well.
Susan, thank you for that. Susan Tarani joining us live from New York. Well, I guess some positive news for the administration going into that midterm vote is the fact that the world's largest economy grew significantly in the third quarter, ending 6 months of shrinking. However, even this couldn't stop carnage in US technology stocks that widened on Wall Street yesterday. The shares of Facebook parent company Meta Platforms sank further by over 24.5% after the costly metaverse bets backfired, I should say, and the impact of soaring inflation on ad spending spooked investors. Meta's already lost more than $500 billion in market value so far this year, and the stock plunge is not looking like it's stopping anytime soon. Amazon suffered steep losses too in year-over-year income as post-pandemic shopping habits and inflation threw the retailer for a loop. Its operating income decreased to $2.5 billion in the third quarter of this current financial year. That's compared to $4.9 billion the same quarter last year, while net income dipped to $2.9 billion versus $3.2 billion during quarter 3 2021. The company's stock dropped about 20% in after-hours trading on forecasts for sluggish holiday sales. Apple remained the only ray of hope as it reported revenue and profit that topped Wall Street targets, the iPhone maker remaining one of the few bright spots in a tech sector battered by spending cutbacks due to inflation. Although iPhone sales were not as strong as some analysts had targeted, they were still a record for the September quarter. Among chip makers, Intel cut its full-year profit and revenue forecast and warned it would lay off staff, but a stronger than expected performance at its personal computer segment helped send shares higher. To North Korea now, which has fired yet another missile. The South Korean military said it had detected 2 ballistic missiles fired from the Tongthong area in North Korea's east coast. South Korea further added it has increased monitoring and is maintaining a full readiness posture in close coordination with the United States. The latest blitz of launches by Pyongyang comes amidst reports of North Korea inching closer to a nuclear test. The US, Japan and South Korea warned against an unprecedented response over the North Korea potential test, vowing unity after a blitz of missile launches from the hermit state. The three nations' deputy foreign ministers said they would ramp up their deterrence in the region. Those remarks made following talks in Tokyo. Seoul and Washington have repeatedly warned that Pyongyang could be close to testing an atomic bomb for the first time since 2017. The head of the UN nuclear watchdog has expressed concerns over reports of North Korean nuclear tests.
Everybody is holding its breath about this because another nuclear test would be yet another confirmation of a program which is moving full steam ahead in a way that is incredibly concerning. Further tests, of course, means that they are refining the preparations and the construction of their arsenal. So we are following this very, very closely.
Those fears also come after North Korea conducted a flurry of ballistic missile launches. North Korea too has separately claimed to have carried out a number of tactical nuclear drills. Last month, the North Korean leader Kim Jong-un declared the country as an irreversible nuclear power, comments which effectively ended negotiations over his banned armed programs. The US says it is still open to talks in a bid to reduce tensions. You might recall that North Korean leader Kim Jong-un met with former US President Donald Trump thrice during his tenure, but the summits did not result in any lasting agreement. The country's shown less interest in taking up US President Joe Biden's offer of those working-level talks. Let's stay with that region as growing Chinese aggression has reportedly worried Japan and could be leading to an arms race. Now, according to Japanese media, the country is in the final stages of sealing a deal with the US to buy its Tomahawk cruise missiles, most recently used by the US Navy in the 2018 missile strikes against Syria. 66 of them were launched targeting alleged Syrian chemical weapon facilities. The cruise missiles can hit targets from more than 1,000 kilometers away, putting parts of China and the Russian Far East within Japan's range. The reports over that US-Japan deal emerged at a time when Tokyo is seeking its biggest arms build-up since World War II, in the face of Beijing's rapid military mobilization and increased activity in nearby waters. Concerns over Chinese military activity in the seas and skies around Taiwan and Japan have intensified of late, especially since Russia invaded Ukraine in February, as it could, experts fear, provide China with a precedent for the use of force against Taiwan. Angered by US House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan and a number of delegations that followed, China in August fired missiles into those waters less than 160 kilometers from the Japanese coast in a display of military might. And during the 20th Communist Party Congress just last week, Chinese leader Xi Jinping called for accelerating plans to build a world-class military. Reiterating China's stand on Taiwan, he said his country would never renounce the right to use force to resolve that Taiwan issue, as he calls it. For Japan, meanwhile, losing Taiwan to mainland Chinese control could also be troublesome because it would jeopardize key shipping lanes that supply nearly all of Japan's oil and many of the materials used for manufacturing, and it would give the Chinese Navy unfettered access to the Western Pacific from bases on that island. Vladimir Putin has said that the coming decade will be the most dangerous since the end of World War II. The Russian president further accused the West of inciting the war in Ukraine and playing a dangerous, bloody and dirty game.
We stand
at a historical frontier. Ahead is probably the most dangerous, unpredictable, but also important decade since the end of the Second World War.
Vladimir Putin's incendiary remarks also come at a time when the Pentagon's warned of acute threats from Russia, but had outlined that China is the most consequential challenge for the United States of America.
The NDS bluntly describes Russia as an acute threat. And we chose the word acute carefully. Unlike China, Russia can't systemically challenge the United States over the long term. But Russian aggression does pose an immediate and sharp threat to our interests and values.
And as that war in Ukraine escalates, Russian-installed authorities in the Donetsk region say Ukrainian shelling has set ablaze fuel tanks at the town's railway station and oil depot.
In the area of the train station, there were 4 cisterns found burning. The second fire was confirmed there. At the moment, there are 35 firefighters and 6 fire trucks are fighting the fire there.
Meanwhile, in the Donetsk region, Ukrainian soldiers are holding their position against the Russians on the outskirts of the eastern city of Bakhmut. The Russian forces continue to bombard the Donetsk region city while making slow gains towards the centre.
Their main aim is to capture the Donetsk region, to have any big success and to show they can do at least something. But they still haven't managed to do this. This area is full of them, and they move back and forth all the time.
Now, cast your minds back to the 14th of April this year. That's the date on which Elon Musk first offered to buy Twitter. Now, he's completed the acquisition of the micro-blogging website. But the journey between then and now has been no less than a rollercoaster ride. Just after the announcement of the $44 billion bid, questions were very quickly raised at how much Musk will have to pay for the deal. Yes, he's the richest man in the world, but even he was looking in a tight spot. Initially, Elon Musk hoped to use only $15 billion of his personal money. Around $12.5 billion of this were loans backed by his Tesla shares, meaning to get that money, he would not be forced to sell them. But ultimately, Musk abandoned the loan idea and put up more funding in cash. The 51-year-old ended up selling around $15.5 billion worth of Tesla shares. By the end of the deal, he personally coughed up over $27 billion in cash. The total sum also includes $5.2 billion from investment groups, and there were some large fund investments as well. The co-founder of Oracle also sent a $1 billion check. Qatar Holding draws money from the country's sovereign wealth fund. Even they stepped in to toss some capital into the deal. And Saudi Arabian Prince Talal owns nearly 35 million shares of Twitter. He transferred all of it in Musk's name. All of these people will become Twitter shareholders now, and that leaves out about $13 billion. That's backed by bank loans. Top companies like Morgan Stanley, Bank of America, Japanese and French banks have extended help. Morgan Stanley alone contributing $3.5 billion. And it's important to understand here that these loans are guaranteed by Twitter and not Musk himself. It'll be up to the company's financial responsibility to pay them back. All these developments come as Twitter has so far struggled to generate profits, having worked at an operating loss over the first half of 2022. Now, LIV's golf season finale gets underway in just a short while from now at the Trump National Doral in Miami. The new circuit's still waiting for official certification from the official World Rankings Board, but it has at least presidential approval. Former US President Donald Trump played Thursday's Pro-Am alongside major winners Sergio Garcia and Brooks Koepka. The former president's course in Bedminster near New York had hosted the third LIV Invitational, and the avid golf fan was seen quite a bit that week. President Trump turned up at the official party on Wednesday ahead of the season finale and didn't shy away from a crack at the current President Joe Biden. This course in Miami has hosted one leg of the World Golf Championship between 2007 and 2016. And the Trump Organization's properties are expected to host events when the tournament expands to 14 events in 2023. There is $50 million up for grabs this weekend in Miami alone, making this the most lucrative tournament ever played in the sport. The PGA Tour's FedEx Cup awards $75 million, but that is a bonus shared between the top 150 players at the end of the season. LIV Golf's international events are over for the season, and this time it's an out and out competition. I mean to say, the top 4 teams in the points tally at the end of the Jeddah event 2 weeks ago have received a bye for the first round. The teams ranked 5 to 8 had the right to pick their opponents for the Friday's matches, where the captains go head-to-head in one of the 2 singles matches, while there will be foursomes matches as well, with each worth 1 point. The 4 seeded teams will then pick their opponents for Saturday's round, which follows a similar format. The final 4 teams go head-to-head on Sunday, with all 16 players out on course in a shotgun start format, with the lowest aggregate score winning the $16 million purse, split equally among the 4 team members. Well, if you're no golf expert, I'm sure you are now. On to other matters. Pop star Harry Styles, we've all heard of him, wore something a little unusual at a recent concert, leading fans to believe it may have been a quiet act of protest. Taking the stage at the Kia Forum in Los Angeles for his October 24th gig, the star showed up dressed in his normal full Gucci body attire, but with one exception. Rather than sporting his usual Adidas Gucci Gazelles, which he's worn for every show of his Love on Tour since June, the 28-year-old pop sensation instead rocked a pair of red Vans sunglasses, and Styles' fans were quick to notice the change, one that came ahead of Adidas cutting ties with Kanye West following the rapper's anti-Semitic comments and hateful remarks. Those fans quickly taking to social media after noticing that change in Harry's wardrobe, many praising him for taking a stand against the company that for many days was seemingly standing by Kanye. However, just a day after, on October 24th, Adidas officially announced that they would be cutting ties with and dropping the American rapper. And finally today, 2 NASA spacecraft at Mars, one on the surface, another one in orbit, have recorded the biggest meteor strikes in impact craters yet. We'll leave you with that. Take a look.
When we compare seismic epicenter with location that we pinpointed from the orbit and the time, we were able to match this large seismic event to our large impact crater. This is by far the largest jointly observed crater recorded seismically and observed from the orbit.
This is right, Arab.